Picture this: 100,000 screaming fans packed into a stadium, the bass line of Billie Jean thundering through the air, spotlights cutting through the darkness like golden swords. Michael Jackson, the undisputed king of pop, the man who could make the world stop spinning with a single moonwalk, is in his element, commanding the stage with the kind of supernatural presence that only comes along once in a lifetime. Then suddenly, impossibly, the music stops. The crowd falls silent. The king himself steps down from his throne and disappears into the sea of reaching hands. Why? Because somewhere in that ocean of humanity, a young fan is struggling to breathe, doubled over with an asthma attack, and Michael Jackson, the same man who could sell out any venue on earth, has decided that no show, no matter how massive, is more important than a single human life. This story has been shared millions of times across social media, whispered in fan forums, and passed down like digital folklore from one generation of MJ lovers to the next. It's the ultimate proof of what we all want to believe about our heroes: that beneath the glitter and the gloves, they're exactly as compassionate as we hope they are. The story goes that Michael didn't just stop the show. He personally ran into the crowd, helped the fan with their inhaler, made sure they were okay, and only then returned to the stage to continue the performance. But here's where things get interesting, and why this story has become one of the most debated legends in music history. Despite being shared by countless fans who swear they saw it happen, despite detailed descriptions of the venue and the moment, despite passionate testimonials from people who claim they were there, there's a problem. A big one. This specific incident, this beautiful, heartwarming moment that perfectly captures everything we love about Michael Jackson, might never have happened at all. So what's the real story? Did the king of pop really risk his reputation, his show, and his carefully choreographed performance to save a struggling fan? Or have we created a modern myth so perfect, so emotionally satisfying, that we've collectively decided it must be true? The answer will challenge everything you think you know about celebrity legends, the power of social media, and why some stories become immortal whether they're real or not. Section 1. When Legends Meet Reality. What actually happened on stage? Before we dive into the asthma mystery, let's talk about what we know for certain. Michael Jackson was absolutely, undeniably famous for stopping his shows when fans were in trouble. This wasn't urban legend. This was documented fact, witnessed by thousands and reported by credible sources. The man who moonwalked his way into immortality genuinely cared about the people who came to see him perform, and he proved it time and time again in ways that went far beyond typical celebrity concern. The most famous verified incident happened at Madison Square Garden in 1996, during his History World Tour. Michael was in the middle of a performance when his trained eye caught something that security had missed. A fan in the crowd was in serious medical distress, their pacemaker malfunctioning. Without hesitation, Michael stopped the entire show, pointed out the fan to security, and refused to continue until he was certain they were getting proper medical attention. He later dedicated a song to that fan and actually changed his entire stage setup for future shows to reduce electromagnetic interference that could affect medical devices. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't just stopping a song. This was Michael Jackson, at the height of his fame, restructuring his entire tour production because he cared about the safety of fans with medical conditions. How many artists would go that far? How many would even notice a single person in distress among tens of thousands of screaming fans? But the pacemaker incident wasn't the only time Michael put fan safety above showmanship. In Seoul in 1996, during another History Tour stop, he physically intervened to prevent a fan from falling off a crane during his performance. Security footage shows Michael himself reaching out to grab the fan, risking his own safety to prevent a potential tragedy. He was also known to reprimand overzealous fans who were endangering others, using his platform not just to entertain but to protect. Here's what most people don't know. Michael's team instituted comprehensive medical tents and crowd control measures at all major tour stops, practices that weren't standard in the industry at the time. While other artists focused solely on the spectacle, Michael was thinking about fan safety in ways that wouldn't become industry standard for years. His crew members from the History Tour tell stories of Michael personally reviewing safety protocols and insisting on additional medical staff. One anonymous crew member from that tour put it perfectly. Michael didn't just perform, he watched over his audience like a guardian angel. If something was wrong, he would know, and he would act. This wasn't public relations spin or image management. This was genuine concern translated into action, documented by multiple witnesses and reported in contemporary media. So when the asthma story started circulating, it felt completely believable because it fit perfectly with Michael's established pattern of behavior. Of course, he would stop a show for a fan having an asthma attack. Of course, he would personally ensure they got help. It was exactly the kind of thing the real Michael Jackson would do. Which makes the truth even more complicated than you might expect. Here's where our story takes a fascinating and frustrating turn that will make you question everything you think you know about internet folklore. Despite thousands of fan testimonials, despite detailed retellings that include specific venues and dates, despite passionate arguments in comment sections across social media, there is absolutely no verified evidence that Michael Jackson ever stopped a concert specifically for a fan having an asthma attack. None. Zero. Not a single piece of contemporary footage, news report, or credible witness account. This revelation hits MJ fans like a punch to the gut because the story feels so real, so perfectly Michael, that questioning it almost feels like blasphemy. Fans swear they remember seeing it on YouTube years ago. They describe the venue. Was it Munich? Bucharest? Maybe London? They remember the details. Michael rushing into the crowd, personally helping with an inhaler, hugging the young fan, the crowd cheering as he returned to the stage. Some even claim to have been there personally. But here's what actually happened when researchers and fans started digging deeper into concert footage, contemporary news reports, and official tour documentation. Nothing. The story exists in a strange digital limbo where everyone remembers it, but no one can prove it. Videos that fans swear they watched have mysteriously vanished. News reports that should have covered such an extraordinary incident never existed in the first place. The most persistent version of the story places it during the HI Story World Tour, with fans claiming Michael stopped Billie Jean mid-performance to help a young fan with an inhaler. But extensive analysis of HI Story Tour footage, much of which was professionally recorded, shows no such incident. Every show, every song, every crowd interaction has been documented by obsessive fans, and none of them include the asthma rescue. Another popular version claims it happened during the Dangerous World Tour, with some fans insisting they have clear memories of watching it on television. Again, no evidence exists. The Dangerous Tour was extensively documented, with multiple concerts broadcast worldwide, and no asthma incident appears in any of them. What makes this even more intriguing is that these false memories aren't random. They're incredibly specific. Fans don't just remember that it happened. They remember exactly how Michael looked, what he was wearing, how the crowd reacted. They remember the venue layout, the song that was playing, even the approximate age and appearance of the fan in distress. These aren't vague recollections. They're detailed, emotionally charged memories of something that never happened. The psychology behind this phenomenon is actually quite beautiful in its own way. Michael Jackson's verified acts of kindness, the pacemaker incident, the soul intervention, his well-documented charity work with sick children, including asthma sufferers, created such a strong emotional impression that fans' minds essentially wrote the perfect story to capture his essence. The asthma incident becomes a kind of emotional truth, a story so perfectly representative of who Michael was that it feels more real than reality. But the absence of evidence doesn't stop the story from spreading. In fact, it might be accelerating it. Welcome to the strangest part of our investigation, understanding how a story that never happened became one of the most shared Michael Jackson legends on the internet. This isn't just about one false anecdote. This is about how digital culture creates and sustains modern mythology, and why some lies become more powerful than the truth. The asthma story perfectly demonstrates what psychologists call false memory syndrome on a massive, collective scale. Fans don't just believe the story happened, they believe they personally witnessed it, often with crystal clear detail that would make any eyewitness proud. "I swear I saw it on YouTube years ago," reads a typical comment. "MJ rushed down, handed the kid an inhaler, hugged them tight. The video's gone now, but I'll never forget it." This isn't deliberate lying. These fans genuinely believe their memories are real. But why this particular story? Why asthma? The answer reveals something profound about how legends form around beloved figures. Michael Jackson had several documented connections to asthma that made the story feel inevitable. He invited asthmatic children to his concerts, supported charities for young asthma sufferers, and even had rumored respiratory issues himself. The asthma story takes these real elements and combines them into one perfect, cinematically satisfying moment. Social media has turned this process into a high-speed mythology factory. A single tweet claiming Michael Jackson once stopped a concert to help a fan with an asthma attack gets shared thousands of times within hours. Each share adds credibility. If this many people are sharing it, it must be true, right? Comments pour in from people who remember seeing it, adding details that make the story richer and more believable. Soon you have a crowdsourced legend, complete with multiple versions, contradictory details, and passionate defenders. The internet's structure makes this phenomenon worse. Unlike traditional media, where false stories could be corrected by editors or fact-checkers, social media allows myths to spread faster than corrections. By the time someone posts, "Actually, there's no evidence this happened," the original story has been shared 50,000 times and embedded in the collective memory of an entire fan base. But here's the most fascinating part. Even when presented with evidence that the story is false, many fans don't care. They've integrated it so deeply into their understanding of who Michael Jackson was that factual accuracy becomes irrelevant. "It doesn't matter if it really happened," one fan wrote when challenged to provide proof. "Michael stopped the show in my mind, and that's enough for me." This response reveals something beautiful and troubling about modern fandom. On one hand, it shows the incredible emotional connection fans feel to their heroes, a love so deep that it transcends the need for factual verification. On the other hand, it demonstrates how our relationship with truth itself is changing in the digital age, where emotional satisfaction can override evidence-based thinking. The asthma story has become what scholars call a viral myth, a false narrative that spreads because it fulfills a psychological need rather than because it's factually accurate. It gives fans proof that their hero was as compassionate as they hoped, provides a perfect encapsulation of Michael's character, and offers a feel-good story in a cynical world. Here's the beautiful irony that makes this whole investigation even more compelling. While the asthma story might be fictional, Michael Jackson's real acts of compassion were so extraordinary that the myth pales in comparison to reality. The tragedy isn't that fans created a false story about their hero. It's that his genuine kindness was so overwhelming that one made-up incident somehow became more famous than decades of documented generosity. Let's talk about what Michael Jackson actually did for people struggling with medical conditions, because these verified stories are more moving than any internet myth. He didn't just invite sick children to his concerts. He quietly paid for their medical treatments, flew families across the world to be with their hospitalized children, and spent hours with young patients who were never going to recover. These weren't photo opportunities or publicity stunts. Most of these acts of kindness were discovered only after his death, when grateful families came forward with their stories. The Heal the World Foundation, Michael's charity, focused specifically on helping children with medical conditions, including respiratory issues like asthma. He funded entire hospital wings, supported research into childhood diseases, and personally visited sick children in hospitals around the world, not as a celebrity making appearances, but as someone who genuinely cared about their well-being. Hospital staff reported that Michael would sometimes spend entire afternoons with young patients, playing games, singing quietly, just being present during their darkest moments. But the internet doesn't remember those stories the way it remembers the asthma myth. Real charity work is complex, ongoing, and often private. It doesn't translate into a single, shareable moment the way a dramatic concert rescue does. The actual Michael Jackson, the man who quietly revolutionized celebrity philanthropy, is harder to capture in a tweet than the mythical Michael who stopped mid-song to save a fan. This phenomenon isn't unique to Michael Jackson. In our social media age, dramatic fiction often overshadows quiet truth. We share stories that make us feel something immediately and powerfully, while deeper, more meaningful realities get lost in the noise. The asthma story gives fans a perfect, movie-like moment to point to as proof of Michael's character, while his actual lifelong dedication to helping sick children requires more explanation than a viral post allows. Other contemporary artists have actually stopped shows for fans in medical distress. Billie Eilish famously halted a concert when she noticed a fan having trouble breathing, and numerous other performers have paused for medical emergencies in their audiences. These real incidents prove that such acts of compassion are both possible and powerful. But somehow, these verified stories don't spread with the same viral intensity as the fictional Michael Jackson asthma rescue. The persistence of the asthma myth reveals something profound about what we need from our heroes. We don't just want them to be talented or successful. We want proof that they would choose compassion over spectacle, that they would risk their reputation for a stranger, that they see individual human suffering even in crowds of thousands. The asthma story provides that proof in the most dramatic way possible, which is why it survives despite its fictional nature. As one cultural critic observed, legends are the stories we need to be true. The Michael Jackson asthma rescue is legendary not because it happened, but because it perfectly captures who we believe Michael was and who we desperately wanted him to be. So here we are, at the end of our investigation into one of the internet's most persistent music legends, and the truth is more complicated than anyone expected. Michael Jackson never stopped a concert to help a fan having an asthma attack. That specific, dramatic, perfectly cinematic moment that has been shared millions of times across social media platforms, debated in fan forums, and passed down like digital gospel, it never happened. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the real story isn't about whether Michael Jackson performed one specific act of heroism, but about why we needed to believe he did. The asthma myth survives because it captures something essential about Michael's character, that his real acts of kindness, quieter, more sustained, less dramatic, couldn't convey in 280 characters or less. In our hyper-connected but emotionally disconnected world, we hunger for proof that our heroes would choose humanity over showmanship, love over profit, individual compassion over mass entertainment. The fictional asthma rescue gives us that proof in the most satisfying way possible. A single moment where the biggest star in the world became small enough to notice one person's suffering, powerful enough to stop everything to help, and human enough to care more about life than performance. It's the story we tell ourselves about what greatness should look like when no one's watching. But here's what makes this whole investigation even more fascinating. Michael Jackson's real legacy is actually more impressive than any single mythical moment. His verified acts of compassion, the medical treatments he quietly funded, the hours he spent with hospitalized children, the revolutionary safety measures he implemented at his concerts represent sustained lifelong commitment to human welfare that goes far beyond any dramatic rescue story. The tragedy isn't that fans created a myth about their hero. The tragedy is that in our viral culture, a single fictional moment can become more famous than decades of documented generosity. We're so hungry for shareable content that we've forgotten how to celebrate the quieter, more complex truths about the people we admire. Yet maybe there's something beautiful in this digital folklore too. The asthma story persists because it represents collective hope. Hope that our heroes are worthy of our devotion. Hope that fame doesn't always corrupt compassion. Hope that somewhere in the world, someone with the power to help actually uses that power for good. Even if the specific incident never happened, the emotional truth it represents, Michael Jackson as a man who would choose individual human need over mass entertainment, remains real. As fans continue sharing the story across social media, as new generations discover it and debate its authenticity, as the myth grows stronger while the facts remain elusive, we're witnessing the birth of modern legend in real time. The asthma story has become what Michael Jackson himself became, larger than life, more meaningful than mere facts, and immortal in ways that transcend truth or fiction. In the end, maybe the most shocking revelation isn't that the story never happened. Maybe it's that in our need to believe it, we've created something more powerful than any single moment of documented history, a shared dream about what greatness should look like, preserved forever in the viral stories we can't stop telling.